everybody. Welcome to Help Me Understand, episode 7 of our podcast, where we are seeking clarity through biblical conversation around some ideas that we hope are helpful as you are making your way through the world, right?
Episode 7, meaning
right.
the number of completion, so this is it. This is our last one.
I think, and the people said amen. Let the reader understand.
Really.
No, we're not. We're just getting started here. So today we're going to talk about something that we feel like is super applicable, and it's not just for who is being addressed in the topic, but it's for everyone too. It's more of like, and when we say men and spirituality, that can have all kind of implications. Are we doing this just because Father's Day is coming up? If you're listening to this, if it's live on Tuesday and you're watching and listening, or if you're going back and listening, men and spirituality can mean a lot of different things. It can mean what women wish men knew about spirituality, what you always wanted to say to the men in our church, but really maybe this is the best opportunity to do so. So kick us off, start us off.
Yeah. So it's often said Christianity is a female sport in our part of the world.
It feels like that at times.
It does feel like that. In most every case, there are larger numbers of women really connected to the body, like involved, maybe attendance-wise on Sunday could be one thing. Usually more women than men in church, but largely connected to the body and the actual ministry of the church is often, it's just more women.
I think that's true in our church. I think we can look at like some of the data around our Connect groups. I think we would say this probably trends more 65-35, more women in the life of our church involved in a group than men.
Yeah, and that used to be the case in some really obvious ways. Like, growing up, churches were pink and had flowers everywhere.
Yes.
It's not, I think we've responded to that in some ways. We, around here, we're like all concrete, rocks,
and wood and steel. And
right.
Yeah, even our drywall is very masculine looking. I love that about our church. So.
And yet, it still tends to be true that women often engage more with the life of the church. So we want to talk about if that's the way it's supposed to be in following Jesus. Like, what does that look like? Certainly, Jesus played no favorites and elevated both masculinity and femininity.
Yeah.
And men and women followed him on earth.
So why is this hard?
Yeah, why is this so hard?
Why is this hard for men?
I'm just rambling about pink churches.
So why is this? This is not your attempt to tee off on men. No. But it's in addressing the elephant in the room, and it's that spirituality can be hard for guys. And so why is that? Why is it so difficult for men to really fully engage?
Yeah, so if we go back to the very beginning, in the fall, in Genesis 3, we see Satan go to the woman, right? We would say that is at the root of where we are. Like all these effects we want to talk about today, that's at the root. Satan goes to Eve. He tells her a lie, that God cannot be trusted. Meanwhile, Adam is present, it seems, from the account, and yet not fully engaged, and certainly not fighting against the enemy's attack at that point.
That's true. Yeah.
So since that time, we would say the enemy has been lying. If there are lies that we believe, which is kind of how we want to frame our conversation today, then at the root of all of that is a liar, someone whispering to us a foundation that is weak or shaky or is crumbling, right? So Adam has disengaged, it seems. Eve's sin is to take the fruit and eat it. Adam's sin is to be disengaged. So from the very beginning, the first two human beings, we see this.
Yeah, so I think that even giving it the category of these are lies that men believe, so we have to say this. If you were going to call something a lie, that implies that there is a liar. All right, so the lie that Satan told Eve and Adam was, if you eat this, if you do this, then you'll be like God is. So for us to say these are lies that men believe, and lies about your spirituality, and lies about your willingness to engage, what we're saying is that it's not just because you're fundamentally messed up as a man.
Right.
It's that you are fundamentally in conflict with an enemy who would not want you to pursue Jesus or discipleship or be involved in the church.
Yeah.
So
Satan wants to whisper to you to stay on the sidelines. And
Yes.
really, I mean, it might be helpful to just say masculinity is engagement. That's what it is. It's intentionality, it's engagement, it's leadership, it's
go first.
It's go first.
Yeah.
That's right. And so our enemy, our spiritual enemy, the devil, is lying to us and saying that can't happen in the context of being a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
That there's it's all submission, it's all emotion, it's all hands off, and there's no little going for it
Yeah.
and living in an intentional way.
Absolutely. Even built into our biological DNA as males, there is an idea of order. Like, we understand order, that there must be a first place. It doesn't take long to train boys to be competitive because they understand the desire to beat someone else in something, to arrive first. And we're saying the same thing is true of spirituality. So why doesn't it happen? Well, there's lies that we believe. There are things that tempt us to turn to the left and to the right. The first lie is that spirituality requires a level of intellect.
Yeah. So in our part of the world, particularly, we would lean less. I mean, so there are a lot of educated people around, certainly, but we would lean less on our education. We would say, we're not building everything upon our intellectual ability. We kind of pride ourselves in some ways on just being plain and simple people.
Right. Yeah.
And so around here we battle this lie a lot. I'm as a man, I'm not able to think. Right. I'm not able to order thoughts.
Right. I don't read.
I don't read books.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it requires a level of the lie is it requires a level of intellect. The assumption on our part is, and I don't have it. Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the level of intellectual ability.
Yeah.
Which is not true. Right. We know it's not true. And we're also not saying that to achieve a level of spirituality means that it is directly correlated to some ability to process knowledge or to obtain a level of knowledge. Right?
Yeah.
It is about processing knowledge. It's not about a level of knowledge you could have. And we're saying, right, like that. All that assumes that God doesn't know how He made you, or He made you defective in a way that keeps you from following Him,
Right.
Which is an obvious lie, right? But
Absolutely.
yet we all can give into that, I think.
Yeah, and we're not talking about understanding either. So there's a difference between intellect and understanding. When we would say intellect is the gathering of information so that you can be able to be informed. So that's this word intellect is the building of block of information in your mind. Understanding is something that you can grow in, that you don't need every single bit of info about a subject to grow in understanding. That's why I feel like when the Bible teaches us about itself, that it tells us that we want to grow not just in knowledge of the Scripture, but in understanding of the Scripture.
And wisdom is another word
exactly.
we might use.
Yeah, absolutely. So first lie, we are too dumb.
yeah.
But it's not true. It's not true. I don't know what happened there.
Can't get it. don't understand.
Yeah.
All right. Second lie. Spirituality is a certain set. We keep looking over here because there's a noise. Just so you know.
There's a noise. There's another camera.
Yeah, there is another camera, but there's some noise happening on the roof. But spirituality is a certain set of emotions. We tend to equate spirituality with emotion.
Now say more about, like, when you say emotions, you don't just mean that emotions that exist. You mean like emotionalism,
right?
Like getting too worked up over something, getting in a frenzy. Go a little bit further.
Yeah, almost just feminine emotions. Like, call it like it is. I'm sorry, that may be insensitive to say, but again, in our part of the world, there's an identification, I think, of certain emotions as effeminate, and like it or not,
that's not where we live, right? We live in a like if you were watching this and you live in a place that's way different from where we are. I mean,
so our context is small town East Tennessee.
Absolutely.
And it might seem like to define masculinity by some of the things that we might say here define masculinity in our context. might seem like the world has moved on. The world has not moved on in every way in our part of the world, right? So in our part of the world, I mean, we have these still very much these stereotypical ideas of masculinity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I like your phrase in our notes.
It's all right. That's
deer
just
hunting, tobacco chewing, rub dirt on it, manhood.
That's right. So pretend it doesn't hurt. Yeah. So why do we think this is bad as guys? Why do we think that spirituality, being boiled down to just being emotional, is wrong? Why do we feel like this sort of we have to give up our manhood in order to be really spiritual?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes to the root of that as a lie again. You know, like we're being whispered to by the enemy that there's no place in our Christianity for those masculine emotions.
Right.
That it's all, again, back to just the idea of effeminate emotions.
Yeah. I read a book called Why Men Hate Going to Church. It's fascinating. David Murrow. But he says this. He says, when Christ called disciples, he did not say, come have a personal relationship with me, even though that may have been how you responded to it in the invitation growing up. But he didn't say, come have a personal relationship with me. No, he simply said, follow me. You hear the difference? Follow me suggests a mission, a goal. But a personal relationship with Jesus suggests we're headed to Starbucks for some couple time. So this idea even of like how we talk about him and following him and being with him feels kind of like the last thing I want to do, which is to sit and talk about how I'm feeling all the time.
Yeah, I know he talks in the book as well just about like most worship music written today. He used, I think the phrase came from him. I could be attributing it to the wrong source, but Jesus as my girlfriend. That's right. A little bit like that's how we sing to him.
What's the old X-29 line? It's prom songs for Jesus.
Proms, yeah.
So, but that's true. There's to a degree that's true. It's like real devotion or even passionate worship has to look a certain way, and that way is girly, you know, and kind of soft and sissy-ish. But spirituality, you say, is more than emotion.
Yeah, it's more than emotion. I mean, it's action. Following implies action. It implies doing something. You receive a level of knowledge, process it into wisdom, and it works its way out of your life. It's not just, it's not obviously all chill bumps.
Yeah.
That's not what it means just to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
I do think, though, there's a lie in that. Like we would say we're not emotional. What we actually want to run from is just femininity in a lot of ways.
Right.
Like we are emotional. We actually passionately love our wives. We passionately love our kids. We passionately love sports and guns and nature and hunting and music and all kinds of things. It stirs up hormones in our body, producing emotion that comes out in our lives.
Yeah.
It's just the emotions we see attached to spirituality often feel like the emotions we're not comfortable expressing. So I think we attach emotion to community, to the notion of relationship. It's a personal relationship with Jesus might mean he and I are going to Starbucks, but like that's what we think of as group life a lot of times in churches. Is we all sit around and we drink coffee,
we're going to hold hands in a circle.
Coffee's not masculine.
Coffee's very masculine.
So we're going to hold hands in a circle and pray.
And if you don't cry, it doesn't count, and it's weirdly uncomfortable. Yeah, that's totally untrue. But
so we have emotion attached to me. Now, like, we got to separate some things from that and recognize it's okay. I mean, it's really all right for someone. Why do you think we even see that stereotype so much? Like, why are we so uncomfortable with thinking of community in those ways as men? I'm just putting you on the spot.
Yeah, but I think because we do not like the idea of having to be vulnerable.
Yeah, we just don't want anybody to really know us.
I don't want to share because if I share, there's a chance for you to discover that I'm not who you think I am.
Yeah, so brand that as feminine because it happens to be easier for women to do so.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's easier for them to they're talking more anyway, and so it's going to come up, and they're wanting to they don't assume an order. They don't assume a competitive list that they need to. And I think that's where it is with guys too, is that if I share something about me, it's not just that I don't want to be vulnerable with you. I don't want to be worse than you are.
Yeah.
Which is messed up, but it's like, I don't want you to think that I have weakness.
Right.
I would rather know about your weakness, because then I can be better than you are, which is so wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. We attach emotion to community like that. I think we attach emotion to musical worship. I mean, to think of church as a primary activity of what it means to follow Jesus, and to think that we have 60 minutes here, 30 singing, 30 listening to preaching.
Yeah,
right? Like,
that's right.
Like that's what we're doing for 30 minutes. I'm here, and some of the songs are like calling me to express my love for the Lord, and I look around, I see people doing expressive things, which it's real easy to go, not everybody's expressive.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not everybody is outward emotion. Not everybody's comfortable drawing attention to themselves, and so
sure.
There's the assumption that if you raise your hands in worship that you're drawing attention to yourself. That's a lie.
Absolutely. No.
And so we're not gonna quit fighting for passionate worship. I stand in one corner, you stand in the other corner on Sundays. And, for 11 years for me here, 8 years for you here, we've been fighting to make it normal that you would expressively worship to the Lord. And some men do.
Right.
It's still, by and large, though, it's not like the people see us doing it and they're like, oh, now I'm going to
but I don't care.
Scream my guts
yeah,
out. I don't care either.
I want to keep doing it.
We're going to fight for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to be honest, the Bible says to do it, right? Clap your hands. Lift your hands. It's in there, and it's a command like anything else. And what happens in those moments, the reason we press for that is because there is a breakthrough when you recognize, I'm not concerned with what everybody else says to me. I'm worshiping God for who He is. I'm not like, everybody else be, darned or whatever.
This is a good man podcast. We're almost cussing. Right. That's great.
Yeah. So it's not like that. It's not like, I don't care what you think. Deal with my crazy, clapping or whatever, or hand raising. But it is like, I'm really going to engage with God.
Yeah.
And if anybody sees me doing that, I just got to be okay with that.
Absolutely. And you talk about the opposite of masculinity is to fear what you think of me more than what I want to do to please the Lord. Yeah. I mean, that's not in any sort of way. That's not brave or courageous at all. Yeah. That's fearful.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Which is not masculine, I should
right.
say. Yep. So another lie, number 3, spirituality is boring. Spirituality is boring. I'm just not engaged by this stuff. It just doesn't connect with me. And so it's not worth me kind of pressing into and going further.
Yeah, I think it's just that we have this odd idea that God wants our lives to be miserable, and that He doesn't want us to enjoy being a follower of Him. So I wrote this note down. I would love to get your thoughts on this. So I think that we use a lot of language in the church, language like, and these are very good words, by the way, and these are important topics for any Christian, but words like discipleship and apprenticeship and taking up your cross, I think that makes spirituality seem like work, and not because that's bad, but we think of work like our jobs. Maybe you think of your job where you go to every weekday 9 to 5. You think of that as boring, and you don't want to do that when it comes to your spirituality or your following Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, do you think we just think of, so what we really want is a really awesome hobby? We have really awesome hobbies. All of us have really awesome hobbies. Do we just want our Christianity to be like that?
I think
is that what that's saying?
That's exactly what that's saying. So if it's not the center of who I am, if it's just a hobby, then I don't want it to feel hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is hard, though.
It is hard. I mean, it's the hardest thing in the world. right? Like
and the worst hobby you could ever have.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep, absolutely.
So, but that's what that's the old line from the A League of Their Own. So the heart is what makes it great. Anything worth doing has got to cost you something, or else it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's true. I hate to kind of move us past some of what I think is in here, but to me it's closely related.
This
to
goes
number 4.
This goes really close to the next
number
one.
4 is so we'll put this in the notes here, but like it's serve Jesus or, so that's the lie. Like I have to choose being a Christian or doing everything else.
Yeah.
Instead of serving Jesus through. So I can raise my son to, like follow Jesus or grow him into a biblical man, or like I can really work hard at my job, or I could like kind of half-heartedly go at my job because what I'm actually doing is I'm a Christian, and Christians don't do those. Like Christians don't do that. We put Jesus in a spot where he's a spoke on the wheel rather than the hub of the wheel, to just be a little cliche, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does call us. He does call us to give priority to the way we spend our time. We gotta worship with the people of God. We gotta know Him. We gotta know His Word. We gotta hide it in our hearts. We gotta share our faith. We gotta be in community. So I do have to make some decisions in the way I spend my time.
Yeah.
But in reality, what He's doing is reordering our lives so that all the other things we do, including work, including marriage, including parenting, including our hobbies, the way we think about our finances, like He's calling us to see those things through the lens of serving Him.
So let me ask a question, and I think this has a lot of implications, but do you think that people who follow Jesus and that their lives are built, as you say, around Him, and that He's not just an outlying part of their lives, but their lives are built around Him as much as they can as people, are they better at all the other stuff? Like, so it's not serve Jesus or, but if you serve Jesus, the other things become, like, you're better at work, you're better at friendship, you're better at being a spouse. I mean, do you think that that's true as well? Like, that sort of, like, preferred future is better because Jesus is at the center?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It depends on how you define better, of course. Right?
Yeah.
Like, if by better you mean more successful from the standpoint of bottom line financially, maybe not.
Right.
Better, like, that your kids are always going to turn out, in the end, to be well-adjusted human beings. No, maybe not, right? But, like, if you define better as faithful to the Lord and, like, that, ultimately that my life's going to bring Him glory, then yeah. I mean, it doesn't guarantee outcomes, but it certainly changes the script. Right?
I mean, it's much better than the opposite.
Yeah.
So this has been episode 7 of Help Me Understand. And if there's any way that we can serve you, answer a question, maybe respond to a comment, you are free, encouraged to be aggressive and intentional. Be a man and email us at HMU@arrowhead.church. We would love to hear your questions and argue with you in this weird medium called podcasting. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and rate us on whatever store you are listening through.
Yeah, typos are welcome even. You don't even have to be...
typos.
Yeah, we love typos.
Yeah. All right. See you next time.